You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined, as always, by your co-host, Kevin. Kevin, how are we doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Another wonderful Friday night that we get to spend here talking game lines, talking props, talking fantasy. So it's hard to complain, man. Doing what I love right now.
Absolutely. It is time for the Fantasy Football Huddle, that old bet, set, snap, as we get ready here for Week 7. And looking forward to getting some questions, comments, all of that good stuff, rocking and rolling. Always a great time getting to do that and getting to hang out with you here on a Friday night. So it is a good one here. Lots of kind of interesting news as it hit the waivers or hit the reports there. Lots of guys set to be out. A few guys that maybe we thought were going to miss, maybe not going to miss. A lot of buys going on this week. So there is a lot of teams that are going to be hurting for a lot of positional needs out there. So it'll be interesting to see. And I'm really looking forward to some of these comments, questions, all that kind of stuff that we get in the chat here from folks as we rock and roll through that. Anything kind of stand out to you?
We have yet to hear about the San Francisco 49ers, right? Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, are guys that you need, right, to play, especially with these bye weeks, their impact, what they can be. So it's brutal, right? But no David Montgomery, that one stings. On top of the buys that are at hand, and the matchups this week kind of are poo-poo, right? Like, they're not glorious matchups. So this is a tough week. It's a tough week to bet. It's a tough week to play. So it's a grind right now.
Absolutely. So it'll be it will be interesting, though, because I think we will see some things kind of happen here. But this is one of those that the totals, all of that I've been seeing seem to be a lot lower this year than what they've been in the last few years here. Most of the time when we go through this, seems to me that we typically in years past have seen a lot of like in the mid 40s, right? And we're seeing a lot more in the high 30s, low 40s type of thing there. So one of those that I'm gonna have to go through now that I say that and look at that and kind of dive into that and see if that really is the case, or if I'm just having some of that back in aught 8, we had lots of points scored in every game.
Yeah, I was reading something. They said that fantasy points, basically the receiving points for the running backs, are down year over year. Right now, this is what it was. It was specifically about that, but it was talking about receiving points to running backs being down. Now, part of that is Barkley was hurt. He's a receiving back. Didn't do a ton at the beginning of the season, but he was getting 2-3 balls a game, right? Eckler down. That's a big deal, right? Eckler was a receiving monster after week 2 last year. So that eats into it as well. But, some of these running backs where you're thinking you're going to be able to double dip because they're prominent in the passing game, it just hasn't come to fruition yet.
Right. So, yeah, it should be very interesting here to see how these things kind of shake out there. And folks, if you have any questions, comments, make sure you put those in the comment, or put that in the chat. Let's help you guys out here with some of the what some folks are calling the buy-ageddon. Couple that with the fact that you've got so many injuries kind of going on here as well, with so many guys on buy, that it does get a little rough out there, and some rosters are fully decimated here in Week 7. So be an interesting deal to rock and roll through there. But should we go ahead and hop into the first matchup here? We got some other things that we need to hit up, you think?
No, let's go ahead and jump on into it.
All righty. Week 7 matchup here. We got the Raiders heading out to Chicago to take on the Bears. The Raiders are favored by 2.5. The over-under on this one's 37.5, this will be an interesting one here as well. We have 2 starting quarterbacks not playing here. But what are your thoughts on this game?
I'm taking the Bears. I think Brian Hoyer is going to be playing quarterback for the Raiders. Devonta Adams came out kind of screaming this week saying, look, y'all brought me in to catch the ball. You got to throw me the ball, right? So I think that they're going to be able to kind of have their way with Chicago here through the air, as with most teams have had. But I expect there to be some points here, right? Vegas is traveling, so I think that they're going to be a little bit more susceptible. I think that their run defense allows Chicago to stay in it because the Raiders are a little porous against the run. So I think that allows things to stay close for a little while. But I think ultimately maybe it's a defensive turnover, maybe a special teams play. But I do think we sneak to the over in this game. But I do have Vegas covering.
Fair enough. I'm right there with you with the Raiders. The Raiders hitting that cover on that one. The Bears have been just bad all the way across. Right? They've missed catching the covering the spread in most of the games. Right? Like they're 1-4-1 against the spread with a 1-5 record. This is one though that I'm right there with you that the Raiders cover the 3, but I don't know that we're going to see that many points put up in this one. Yes, the Bears defense is bad. Yes, the Raiders defense is bad. However, we've got, journeyman, career backup Brian Hoyer playing starting quarterback for the Raiders is what it looks like. Tyson Baguette or Banjette. It looks like he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears. Roshan Johnson also out of this one. You have Khalil Herbert also out of this one on the Bears side. So it looks like Donta Foreman's kind of a full go for the entire work of the backfield again, it looks like. So this is one of those that I think we're going to see an under in a kind of just a grimy game to watch. This one here is not going to surprise me if we look up and we see this end 17-14 in favor of the Raiders. One of the props that I like is I do like Michael Mayer to go over 20.5 receiving yards. We've seen this. We've seen Michael Mayer come out and touch about 40 yards 2 weeks ago. He had his coming out party, kind of that breakout game there with that big flash last week. I think we see that kind of continue in 20.5 receiving yards. Seems a little low in this one.
No, fair enough. I have Devontae Adams. I just lost my spot. Over 67.5 receiving yards. Like I said earlier, he was screaming a little bit, saying, "Give me the damn ball." And I think the Raiders are going to oblige you a little bit. They're going to find ways to get him fed early, often, keep him happy, settle the rumblings here a little bit.
I like it. Let's go ahead and hit up our next matchup here. We got the Cleveland Browns heading over to the Indianapolis Colts. The Browns favored by 3. The over under on this one, 41. Thoughts on this one?
I'm hoping the Browns don't have a little bit of a hangover, right, from beating the Niners here. But I do have Cleveland covering this game. The push wouldn't surprise me, quite frankly. I like the fact that it's a round number because it gives me that option. But nevertheless, I'm taking the under in this game. I think points are going to be at a bit of a premium, whether Deshaun Watson comes back or not. I don't think the Colts are going to be overly effective moving the ball against a really stout Cleveland defense. But I do think that both teams wanting to run the ball, this game's going to be pretty short. Possessions are going to be limited here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do think that Cleveland pulls this thing out. I'm seeing kind of a 20-17 type of matchup here. So I do think that we come in just under that 41 number. I think Cleveland covers that thing. One of the props that I really liked on this one was Jonathan Taylor to go under 45.5 rushing yards. And it's not going to surprise me that we see this line actually creep up farther, just with the way that some of the things are going and the way folks are tailing this particular prop. But I do think that we're still very much in a Jonathan Taylor ramp-up period, and I honestly think that he's going to be hard-pressed to go over 30 yards rushing in this one.
Yeah, that one's going to be a bit interesting, right? So 2 weeks ago, we saw him at about 25% of the snap share. Last week, it was about 50%, kind of a dead even split. So now it's going to be, where does it go from here, right? Does it jump up to 60? Does it jump up to 65? Does it maybe touch close to 70? Like, what exactly is going to be this home? And we talked about this on the Tuesday show that Zach Moss really hadn't done anything to lose his job, right? Jonathan Taylor is just a better talent. But Zach Moss, the results that he's getting when the ball is in his hands, it's favorable, right? Like, it's really hard to take the ball away from a guy who is being productive, and he absolutely is. He is being productive for the Colts. So I'm interested to see what this breakdown looks like against a tougher defense. But I do like that prop. I'm going to take an Amari Cooper anytime touchdown. I think with Deshaun Watson coming back, trending that way, I think he's going to play. I think he's going to hone in on his favorite target here, and we're going to see Cooper get in the end zone.
I like it. We do have a question coming in here, so let's hit that one up before we get to our next matchup here. George over on YouTube. Hey guys, I'm 6-0. My team is Tua, CMC, Kenneth Walker, Cooper Kupp, Olave, Goddard, and the flex is James Cook. Should I trade away for Waddle? And should I start Zach Evans or Darrell Henderson if CMC doesn't play? I think it kind of depends on what you need to give up for Waddle.
Cook. What do you have for wide receiver on your bench? Because I'm not in love with the Zach Evans or Darrell Henderson play. You have Royce Freeman, who they're talking up as well. I given a choice here, I'd actually choose Henderson over Zach Evans, right? When Sean McVay has been talking about these running backs, he has high remarks for Royce Freeman. He has high remarks for Darrell Henderson, and Zach Evans is a young player who's still learning. Like Dante, Dell, Jameson, JSN.
Dell's on bye.
You'll know. I think you should know if Deontay's out of protocol. And I know it's a tougher matchup.
He should be out of protocol. There was props galore on Deontay Johnson.
Okay. So
typically you don't see that this late in the week if he's not cleared.
Yeah. So, or I guess off IR is what I'm saying, not protocol. But well, Dell's on the bye, so Jameson, JSN.
JSN's got that.
I think if McCaffrey can't go, I would move James Cook into your running back spot, and then I would play I think I'd go Jameson or Deontay and try and maybe Jameson if you need the upside, right? Like if you need points, maybe Jameson. If you need the safer floor, Deontay should get you volume, right? He is this good security blanket. Yes, it's a tougher matchup against the Rams, but Deontay should get you PPR points, right? I expect him to see 7 targets in this game. So if he can come down with 5 of them, it's a safer path to 10 points. If you need more than 10 points, yeah, I'm not touching the running game. The offensive line's been so bad, I'm not touching Pittsburgh's running game. I think that's how I would play it. And the problem is with the Monday night game, you're going to have to make that decision Sunday morning, right? Like the Niners are not going to release this information until 90 minutes before game time. So I think you're just going to have to decide at being 6-0, can you start McCaffrey and then possibly take the L, right? Because you have a big goose egg from a guy who's been averaging 20 points a game. Or do you sacrifice the possible 20 points saying if he plays, he's going to be a little bit limited. You play Deontay and you can make up at least half of that. So depends on the matchup. I think I would lean towards, this is the downside about the Monday night games, but I think I would lean towards let's wait and see till right before kickoff on Sunday. If there's no news, right, about the walkthrough on Saturday or how any of that went out, then you bench McCaffrey, you slide Cook into your running back spot, and then you play Deontay in your flex. But I wouldn't play Evans or D'Angelo Henderson this week.
Right.
Darrell Henderson. Sorry, Darrell.
Right. And it's one of those two that McCaffrey didn't practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So we've got 3 practices late in the week. We haven't seen him play. And Kevin, that's a really good point that you're going to have to make that decision come Sunday morning on whether or not to start and pivot off of these guys here. The only way that, I'd probably take that shot a little bit more so on a CMC is if you've also got the ability to go out and get like an Elijah Mitchell, go out and get Jordan Mason. That way, if McCaffrey misses, you can slide one of those guys into that slot there. But it does get tough. Certainly missing all the practices, especially late in the week, does not give very good warm and fuzzies about CMC playing this weekend. And I know most of the folks out there looking at a lot of different rankings, things like that. There's a lot of people out there that also think that he is likely not going to play. So going back to his other question there, should he trade for Jalen Waddle? And I think some of that depends on what you would need to give up to go get Waddle. Like, I'm right there with you on the fact that, I think that the breakout is coming, right? Like it's hard to contain the talent of Jalen Waddle that we're going to see some big explosions through the back half here, but it also kind of depends too on what you need to give up. Like Jalen Waddle's kind of the forgotten man in Miami on a record trending offense.
Yeah, I don't think I do it because of how the rest of your running back room is shaping out. Because if you trade away Cook, you're in a timeshare in LA with the Rams for 4 weeks, right? And then both these guys almost become obsolete once Kyron Williams comes back. And the Pittsburgh running game is an absolute mess, right? Both running backs are blah. Like, you at least have top-end running back 2 potential with James Cook. Yes, Waddle gets you top-end, wide receiver 1 potential, but he's been finishing closer to that lower end of wide receiver 2. And I think with Kupp back and healthy, that makes up some of that difference for you. So I like it, but I don't know that I do it, if that makes sense. And I'm not going to shame you if you decide to pull the trigger on this, right? It is that close. For me, I wouldn't like how the rest of my running back room looks, knowing that McCaffrey's dinged up. And if he's dinged up and him or Kenneth Walker go down, you are now stuck having to play Jaylen Warren as your RB2. And that's not a position I would personally want to be in.
And actually, I guess that kind of depends too. George, is there an offer on the table already, or is this you're kind of exploring things? Because if you're in that still kind of exploring things, this is going to sound kind of gross when I throw these names out here, but there's a world in which you can spin this thing to try and make a deal happen here, right? Jalen Waddle's ranked 41 on the season, half-point PPR. Tank Dell is about 3 spots ahead of him on that right now, and Tank Dell's missed time as well. So you could potentially throw out a Tank Dell and try and see if you can get a Tank Dell and Warren trade for Waddle on that one, and see if somebody's just so darn frustrated by the wide receiver they took in the second round that they're willing to get a 2-for-1 type of deal there. Now it might be one of those that you get, that it doesn't progress past the offer, but it's something that you could potentially try and do that. I just saw something else here come in, so we'll see what that. There we go. So yes, the guy has Stevenson and Javonte as his RBs, and he offered me Cook for Waddle. If you've got Cook, you need more. Like, you need more back. You're trading the RB 18 on the season for the RB or for the wide receiver 41.
Yeah. Trying to catch Waddle when he's low. I get the buy low. Like, And I even get the potential to sell high with Cook, right? With Lat Murray kind of eating into some of these touches for whatever reason. Cook looks so much better than Latavius Murray does out there. So much better. And the Bills are just refusing to let Cook or cut Cook loose, essentially, and let him do his thing. That's what his running back room looks like. I guess I don't disagree with Derek, right? See if you can offer a Tank Dell and Jalen Warren for Waddle and see if that does something. Hell, Deontay Johnson and Jalen Warren, and he may not want two Steelers, but
Jameson at least gives you the upside, so you could go Jameson and Warren at that point.
I mean, yeah, I'd try and package two of yours for Waddle and see if you can just keep that conversation going. No.
The other thing too, and this is, Kevin, I know your thoughts on one of these guys I'm about to say, but I think that we might see a little bit of an upswing coming for him over the back half here. But this might be one of those that you even see if you can send Cook for, if he wants Cook, right? You're trading a top end RB2 and see if you can get Stevenson and Waddle at that point. Because, Stevenson's a guy that a lot of folks are down and out on. I think that we've seen kind of the floor on this thing, and I think we're going to see him kind of settle out and perform more in that kind of back end RB2 territory. So if you've got him as your flex and you've got Waddle as that upside there, but this is one of those that, if you're looking at just from a pure ranking standpoint, from a pure production standpoint on this one, Jalen Waddle is, as far as trade capital goes, is pure name on that one. He's so far has been outperformed by Tank Dell, Kendrick Bourne, Tutu Atwell, Cortland Sutton, Mike Thomas, Josh Reynolds, Rashid Shaheed, Curtis Samuel, all of these guys that, had we told you 7 weeks in that you'd be in a better position having drafted those guys than Jalen Waddle, we would have been laughed out of the room type of thing. And that's where you need to understand that that's what you're getting. And you're assuming all the risk by taking Waddle on at this point, because if he continues to produce it, 10 points a game on that one, it gets a little rough for you at that point.
Yeah. Especially with Damian Harris going on IR. He wasn't seeing a bunch of touches, but he was seeing the field a little bit. So that frees up some room for Cook. Yeah. So I do like that one. Like, if you're going to pair them up, like, I'll give you Dell and Cook for Waddle and Stevenson.
Yeah.
Like, I'd entertain that, right? If you want a little bit more power on the receiver side to kind of go along with that. But I think that's kind of where I would leave it. Like, I don't know that I would do it straight up. I think that, yes, the best is yet to come for Waddle, but I still think that James Cook is an extremely valuable piece for how you have your roster constructed right now. So, again, he's a middle RB2, right? But that's a great thing to have when you have two top end RB1s on your roster, right? Like, you can have him and you can get through the Niners bye week here in week 9. I believe their bye week is, right? So McCaffrey does have a bye week coming up. So maybe you revisit after the Niners bye week, so that way, A, McCaffrey can get healthy, and B, that CMC and Kenneth Walker are your guys going forward. You don't have to mess around with that so much. You're just anchored in at your running back position, and then maybe you look to deal Cook. So I don't know that it has to be right now either. You could sit on it for a couple weeks and then go once you get through your top two guys in their bye weeks.
Right. I like it. George saying, thank you for the advice, guys. You are most welcome. Guys, again, if you have questions, comments, all that, throw them in the chat. Let's go ahead and talk about them, help you all out and get you guys ready to rock and roll here week 7, rest of the season, all that good stuff. Let's go ahead and get into our next matchup, though. We got the Buffalo Bills heading over to the New England Patriots. Buffalo favored by 8.5, over under on this one, 40. Thoughts on this one?
When I first filled out the show doc, I looked at it and I instantly went, oh, yeah, it's a divisional game. Belichick will have something for him. Allen hasn't been playing like super hot. He's just been able to get by. I'm going New England to cover. And then I sat on it for 2 hours and then went back and looked at it and went, no, because there is no offensive movement for the Patriots here at the moment. Mac Jones has been yanked 2 out of the last 3 games, right? So, and now they're inserting, hell, I don't remember the rookie's name. The guy that they're bringing in for the goal line set now, do the Wildcat stuff. It doesn't matter.
Malik Cunningham, I think.
Yes, thank you, Cunningham. Yes. So they put Bailey Zappi as inactive when they trusted him to come in the fourth quarter, and they had Cunningham coming in. So what's this going to do? It's all gadgetry, right? Smoke and mirrors, because New England's just not a good team right now. So I pivoted back to Buffalo. I do think they win this game by about 10, if not possibly more, and they kind of get their head in the right space, right? They had that loss in London. They kind of had their oh crap moment last week against the Giants. I do think it was a little bit of a wake-up call, and we'll see this team be more efficient offensively here going forward.
Yeah, and this is one that if I told you, 20 points, right? Like you would think that, just off of the top of your head, that kind of stuff. If I told you 20 points is what, for New England, you would think that, that's kind of what they've been averaging because the offense hasn't been good, things like that. No, 20 points is what they've scored in their last 3 games combined. They've had 20 points in multiple games here when you combine them up. Last 3. So this is one of those that it's not going to surprise me if we see New England struggle to get to 10 points on this thing. But I think that when this thing's all said and done, we see a Bills victory somewhere in the neighborhood of like 28-10 type of thing. So this is going to be a just on the underside of it. This is one of those two that Buffalo themselves seems to be having some issues and struggles the last few outings, right? Like they had a hard time seemingly taking care of the Giants last week. They looked like they were still on the plane plane ride over to London to play Jacksonville the week before that. So Buffalo's had their struggles last couple of weeks here as well. But I do think that this is a lower scoring game, 28-10 type of thing. One of the props that I really like is Gabe Davis over 2.5 receptions. That's one.
Sorry. I'm going to take James Cook over 53.5 rushing yards. I think the Bills are going to be able to get a lead in this game. They're not going to have to, I guess, drive the ball down the field. It'll let them work on some of these things. And James Cook has been pretty dang efficient running the football, right? Bad game against Jacksonville, but bounced right back against a bad Giants team for 74, 76 yards, whatever it is. New England's not a whole lot better against the run. So I think we're going to see something similar, and that he'll fairly easily be able to outpace that 53.5.
I like it. Question coming in here. Let's go ahead and hit this one up. Joe over on the YouTube saying, working on a trade, give up 2 between Ramondre, Rashad White, Jalen Warren for Pollard. It'll kill me this week because he also has CMC and Roshan, but long run, hope it gets done. Is it a good deal? So you're trading a kind of a back end RB2, top end RB3 for a top 10. Tony Pollard's an RB12, so a back end RB1.
Yeah, if I'm offering the deal, I'm hoping Jalen Warren and Ramondre or White, whichever one you don't want to deal with, honestly, gets that job done. If I'm the Pollard owner, I'm probably going to say pass. Like, we know that this Cowboys offense can be high octane, and Tony Pollard, yes, he's come off to back-to-back down games, but they've been against better rushing defenses, right? San Francisco stout all over, and the Chargers' weakness is through the air. They do a pretty decent job stopping the run here so far year to date. So I'm not probably going to love it if I'm the Pollard owner. You're going to have to fluff this up, Joe, right? You're going to have to make this really good. You're going to have to kind of talk to this guy and work your way into this deal. I don't think just blindly shooting it over is going to get it done.
Yeah, I've got Tony Pollard in the home league, and I would tell you flat out that your offer needs to find more teeth to it in order for me to move off of Pollard. Right, and I've got the RB depth on that I could even do that, but I'm not getting rid of an RB1 and who's going to be a top 10 rest of season RB, even in not great weeks type of thing. Like I'll need more on that one. Yeah. Like you better be bringing a wide receiver 1 to the table. You better be bringing another, 2 RBs that are back end RB or top end RB2 type of deals to move up in there. Like there's some other things in there.
Yeah. Are they really hurting?
He's also saying he's throwing in a 12-string acoustic guitar.
There you go. So your league mate who has Pollard, is he hurting at running back? I guess that might be cause, right? Like if he went Pollard and Nick Chubb, right? You could see this, right? Pollard and Chubb round 1 and 2. And obviously Chubb went down and he didn't grab another back until late, right? Later. So he has, does he have like a Tyler Algier? Like what's his depth look like? Right? Because if he has depth at running back, this isn't going to get done. I agree with Derek. But if he had something like a Nick Chubb who went down and hurt, if he has Javonte Williams, who has been less than stellar, Breece Hall,
Chubb, and other. At that point, if I've got Breece Hall and Tony Pollard, like it's going to take something to knock my socks off to move off of that because I'm banking on my 2 RB1s rest of the season to carry my squad.
Yeah, your hope is, right? Your hope is because they're all on bye this week. So yes, toss it out there. And your hope is because every single one of those backs, Pollard, Hall, Chuba Hubbard, are all on bye this week. That he is just RB desperate, trying to figure out what way is what. And if he's not willing to be diligent and sacrifice the week, then maybe he does get the deal. So yeah, toss it out there, knowing that all these guys are on bye, right? You never know what's going to happen when people feel desperate, like if they have to have a week and this is what their problem is. You're giving them all 3 of those guys play this week. So you're giving him starting running backs instead of taking an L.
Yeah, and he says
he's seriously pondering it. Okay, and that would be why. That makes more sense. That makes
a lot more sense.
Yes, that makes more sense. Mm-hmm. So it might have to be White and Stevenson to get Pollard, right? If I'm the Pollard owner, that's what I'm shooting for. If that's what you're offering out. If I'm you, I'm trying to pump up the Jaylen Warren side of things. Like, look, he's catching all these passes. Stevenson's not catching the ball. Rachaad White's starting to split more time with other backs in the backfield in Tampa Bay. So what we thought we were going to see at the beginning of the season, he's kind of regressing a little bit. Like, pump some of that up for yourself, right? And see how that goes, because I don't know. I wouldn't hate it. Like, if you get it done, good for you. Like, that's a home run move. Right. That could be a league-winning move by being able to solidify that. So I hope it works out for you. And we're just going to have to see how he shakes out and if he wants to sacrifice this week or if he feels like he needs to go fight for a win.
Yeah. Yeah, because at that point, if he's got CMC and Pollard going down the stretch, like this is going to be a tough squad to overcome. All righty, Tucker over on Twitch is asking Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra, or Devontae Adams. It's a full PPR pick 2.
who's your flex that you're having to pick only 2 of these guys? Because Tucker,
Right.
good on you. Your roster must be loaded. Man.
My initial gut reaction would tell you to take Keenan Allen and Amon-Ra, but Keenan Allen, the Kansas City matchup's been a tough one, especially for opposing wide receivers. And on the Tuesday show, I had Keenan Allen as my pine, so I'm actually expecting him to underperform and not quite hit projections on this one. I think you're right. I think the Devontae Adams call from earlier in the show tonight, I think you're right. I think they feed him the ball a little bit, right? Like he's going to be kind of that safety blanket for Hoyer. He's going to, feed him there fairly well. I think Amon-Ra is the smash on this one. But yeah, that's a heck of a squad if you're having to pick only 2 of these guys to rock and roll.
Jeez. Yeah, I think I'm playing Adams against the worst defense that any of these receivers are going up against. I think Brian Hoyer can find a way to get him the ball enough to make him relevant. 8 out of 13 is kind of how I'm seeing Adams' stat line looking for receptions and targets. And if he has 8 receptions, you're probably looking at a minimum of 90 yards. Yeah. So, and then, man, I think I'm going St. Brown just because without David Montgomery, I think they're going to have to change up what this Lions offense looks like a little bit, and they're going to have to use St. Brown a little bit more and be creative with him. But it still feels dirty having to sit Keenan Allen, and I think that's the call here is you're sitting Allen this week, and just be prepared that no matter what 2 you go with, you're going to be frustrated because I think all these guys could have very big weeks when it's all said and done.
Yeah. And it's not like the Devontae has the best matchup of them all, but Amon-Ra has a tough matchup against Baltimore. Keenan Allen has the tougher matchup between the 2 as far as fantasy goes and where they allow points to and all of that. But congratulations on assembling that roster. I'm a fan of that roster construction if that's what you're having to pick between.
Good, they're good problems to have, right? Especially this week when there's so many people on a bye.
Absolutely. Terrence, my squad is Howell, Harris, Ford, Kupp, Cooper, Musgrave, Pickens, the Browns defense, and Maher. I like it. He's going up against Watson, Barkley, Gibbs, Diggs, Olave, Njoku, Tampa's defense, and Tucker.
I like your chances, Terrence. Right, Watson's first game back. For sure, I like your chances, man. I think I'd say you're a 60-40 favorite. Right, I'm just kind of looking at the roster construction here right now, leading into the game. We know what Olave's already done, and
it wasn't
okay, but
okay,
not.
Yeah,
it wasn't. He didn't blow the doors off. Right, Kirk got that touchdown when he broke off for 46 or yards or whatever that long touchdown was that he got, and just be glad you're not playing Calvin Ridley.
Exactly. Hey, congratulations on your pine call, by the way. That 1 point is going to look really good when we update that. So,
thank you.
All righty. Let's go ahead and hit up this one, and then I'm going to come back to the other one here. So, Terrence saying that he's not sold on Musgrave, had the Steelers tight end, but he had a setback, so picked up Musgrave. Right, Terrence, I know you tune into the Tuesday shows as well. I called for Musgrave as my shine for the tight ends this week. He plays Denver. Denver gives up the most fantasy points, so he's got a prime matchup on this one. I think that he'll do well for you. I'm not going to surprise me if we see Musgrave fall into the end zone and end up with 40 or 50 yards. So I don't have a problem playing Musgrave if he's on my roster.
Yeah, I think it's a very strong pivot with Freiermuth having the setback and being downgraded to out for this week.
Right. Alrighty, and then question coming in on the YouTube: Keontae Ingram or Justice Hill. If Metcalf doesn't play, do I start Josh Palmer or do I start JSN?
I guess Justice Hill, because he's kind of been their goal line back.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lions are stingy against the run. Like, they've been very good in their front seven with not letting teams run on them. That's going to be tough either way. I think Justice Hill gets you the touchdown upside. I think Keontae Ingram might give you some receiving upside, but one touchdown outdoes 6 receptions, right? Like, or equal to 6 receptions. So I think you lean Hill by a hair. And I think if Metcalf doesn't go, this could be a JSN week against a bad Arizona defense.
Yeah. Much as I don't want to go that route, I think you're right there. Kansas City has been really tough. Like this is not your, what we're used to seeing out of Kansas City, where they're just going to shoot out everybody. And a year ago, 2 years ago, like, we would have been looking at a Chargers Chiefs matchup expecting to see 70 points put on the board type of thing, where both of these teams easily get into the 30s and all of that. And we're going to cover this matchup here later on here, but I don't think that that's going to be as high scoring as everybody thinks it is. And I think that points are going to come at a premium in that Kansas City and Chargers matchup there. So I'm right there with you. I think that we'll see more points go off in that Seattle and Arizona matchup. And I think that I'm going to lean to the spot where there's more option for points. And that all is, of course, determinant upon if Metcalf plays. If Metcalf plays, you're going to go Josh Palmer because he'll, at least see the ball more. Alrighty. Terrence saying that his bench is Hall, Garrett Wilson, T. Higgins, Kyron Williams, Stroud, Lawrence, Achane. And asking if we're still leading Musgrave over Thomas. So I'm assuming that's Logan Thomas at the tight end spot. I'm going to take the matchup on that one, right? With tight ends, if you don't have Travis Kelce, realistically, you are looking for touchdown upside on that one. Logan Thomas and the Commanders playing the Giants, Luke Musgrave playing the Denver Broncos. I think that we're going to see more points out of that Broncos game, and I think that there's a better chance that Luke Musgrave falls into the end zone than what Logan Thomas does this week. Any other thoughts?
No, but it's by the slimmest of margins.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a 51-49 type of thing for me, Terrence. But I'm going to lean with the guy that has the better matchup if it's basically a 50-50 call, this is kind of where we're in that territory on.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm good with that.
All righty. Let's go ahead and hit up our next matchup. And again, guys, if you have any questions, comments, throw them in the chat. Let's chat about them. Let's get that going. Right. We were just talking about Logan Thomas. Let's go ahead and hit up that matchup here with the Commanders heading to New York to take on the Giants here. Washington's favored by 2.5. The over under on this one, 37.5. What are your thoughts here?
I'm going to take Washington here. I think that the Giants just are kind of a mess right now, right? Like, they're trying to find their way and find what they need to do to be relevant offensively. Okoye has been doing a good job, kind of stuffing up the middle for the Giants and defensively, but he's a one-man wrecking crew right now. And unfortunately, he doesn't play defensive back. So Commanders are a little bit more balanced right now with their ability to throw the ball. So yeah, I'm going to lead Washington to barely cover, right? 3-point game. Wouldn't surprise me if it was in the final, 3 minutes of the game or something. They drove down, they win a game. I mean, 24-21, something like that at the very end. But that would require the Giants to score 3 touchdowns. And I don't know if that's going to happen either. So maybe it's 20-17.
Fair enough. I'm kind of right there with you. I do think that Washington wins this thing. I think this is going to come down to, last second field goal heroics type of deal. Divisional matchup here on, the Giants haven't been good, but they somehow managed to keep teams that kind of, lower, grinded out, grimy type of games here. A little bit surprising from what we've seen, but I do think that that's kind of what we're going to get here as well, as a lower scoring affair. So I'm going to take the under on this one. Not going to surprise me if we look up and we see this one end 17 to 10, 14 to 10 type of thing. Like I think this is going to be a very low scoring type of affair. So I'm taking the under. I do like Terry McLaurin though to hit his or to go over his prop of 4.5 receptions in this one.
Very good. I'm going to take Curtis Samuel to go over 33.5 receiving yards. He has been finishing pretty consistently in wide receiver 2 territory. So I think he's able to get over the top of that.
Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me if that Terry McLaurin deal, we see, 2 or 3 receptions on that very last drive to get him to 5. But I think that we'll see him get there. And I like that Curtis Samuel call. All righty. Let's go ahead and hit up our next matchup here. We've got the Atlanta Falcons heading down to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. Bucks favored by 2.5. Over under on this one, 37. What are your thoughts here?
Man, I think Tampa Bay wins this game at home. I think this game is going to be pretty back and forth, right? Like Tampa Bay is solid, right? They played Detroit tough. I think they're going to play Atlanta tough as well. Yards on the ground are going to be hard to come by for Bijan. But ultimately, I think Baker finds a way. And I think Tampa Bay is going to find a way to kind of learn how to win with this newer crew that they have here. So I'm going to take the over. I think there's going to be just enough points to get over that. So something 24, what is it? 27, 24, something like that. 27, 20 could be something like that. So I do think we get over that 37, but it might be a little interesting to see how we get there.
Yeah, I think that we see just enough points coming this one, right? Like both of these teams have a tendency to get right around 20 points a game type of thing. So it's not going to surprise me if we see a 23-20 type of outcome with Tampa Bay just squeaking that one out. So I do see the over on this one hitting as well. As far as a prop goes, right? Like it's interesting. You mentioned the Bijan having a tough time getting his yards on the ground. I think that you're right. I think that he's going to have a harder time doing that, but I do think that Atlanta is going to find a way to get a playmaker the ball in some space, and he's going to find his way into going over 3.5 receptions.
Very good. I'm going to take Drake London over 46.5 because I think Tampa Bay is going to be leading in this game. And Atlanta's going to have to stay balanced. They're not going to be able to just run the ball in this one, so it's going to force Desmond Ridder to the air. I think Drake London's going to be kind of a primary recipient of said fruitfulness.
I like it. All right, let's hit up our next matchup here. We got the Detroit Lions heading over to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Baltimore favored by 3. The over-under on this one, 43. What are your thoughts here?
I'm going to take Detroit. I think they're on a roll. I think Detroit is playing really good football here right now. This has the potential to be one of the more fun games and competitive games on the slate that we have here on Sunday. But I think the Lions find a way to get this done on the road. They've been playing really well. Baltimore plays to the level of their competition, so I do expect them to show up in this game. But I think ultimately as my son calls them, the Blue Lions are going to wear them down here and win this one at the end.
I like that. I think you're right. I think that Detroit finds a way to get this thing done. I see them walking away with a road victory on this thing. I do think that we're going to see just enough points to see the over on this one. Not going to surprise me when we look up and we see a 27-24 type of win, even a 24-21 type of win. Like I think that we see just enough points to get in, squeak into that over on this one. One of the props that I like, though, Zay Flowers to go over 4.5 receptions. I think they find a way to keep feeding him the ball.
I like that. I'm going to take an Amon-Ra St. Brown anytime touchdown. He's been a focal point of this offense. I think they need to continue that with David Montgomery being out. It's going to lean on him just a little bit more. Sam Laporta is dinged up here a little bit. So that, and he was dropping some uncharacteristic passes last week. Had a couple cases of the dropsies. So we'll see if that gets cleaned up. But we're gonna let the sun god eat here. It gets in the end zone.
I like it.
But so I'm going to stop us right here before we move on to the next one.
All right.
The Lions were a lot of people's darling heading into this season, right? That's no surprise. A lot of people pick. Did you think that they would be 5-1 heading into this with a very legitimate shot of having a massive road win for them here in Week 7 and being 6-1 and really having a stranglehold on the NFC North this early in the season?
Funny you should ask. I actually have a surprise. I've got my picks actually called out there. So at this point in the season, I had Detroit. I had them at 4-2.
Okay, so right there.
Yeah. So
was the Kansas City game? Is that the one that screwed up?
It was the Kansas City game. Was the one that messed that one up. So, but yeah, like it. And this was one of those that I actually put down some early futures on Detroit. To win the whole darn thing. So just because the line was so good at that point. With the odds being so good at that point. So I think they've got a legitimate shot, right? Coming into the season, I saw them as a top 4, top 5 team coming in. So it doesn't 5-1 little shocking because I thought that they would have picked up a loss in Week 1, but not that surprising either. Like they've come out and they really are playing very effective on both sides of the ball on this one.
Fair enough.
So I did have them, having a little bit of a tough stretch down the stretch here where they had a couple of games where they dropped it a little bit, but I think I ultimately had Detroit at, a win-loss record of 11-6. So
good enough to win that division and very respectable.
Right. So I don't know what were your thoughts here on the Detroit? A little bit of a surprise for you?
I'm surprised with how well the defense is playing and how the offense hasn't had to just go in shootout mode. The win last week really impressed me, right? And we probably didn't give it enough credit on the Tuesday show just because we're trying to cover so much and get through what we need to. But the defense is impressive. They're not getting gashed. They're not giving up massive amounts of home run plays. Like when you're asking Jared Goff to, put up 23 to 26 points a game and you're not asking him to put up 35 to 38 points a game, like that's a massive difference, right? You're able to take some of these games and shrink them down. Like how they've been able to use David Montgomery up to this point has worked out really well for the games he's played, right? Like now we're going to be 7 weeks in and he's only been able to play in 5 of them. So you do worry about his health, right? If he can stay healthy with him getting 24 touches a game, because that is a massive workload. And so you kind of hope Jahmyr Gibbs can take a little bit off that, right? Because the Lions are better with Montgomery in there, but I'd rather have Montgomery in for 19 or 20 touches a game and play every week than 24 touches a game and every third game he has to sit.
Right. Agreed. All right. Let's go ahead and hit up that next matchup if no other thoughts on that one.
Let's do it.
All right, we got the Steelers heading out to Los Angeles, take on the Rams. The Rams favored by 3. The over-under on this one, 44. What are your thoughts here?
I'm taking the Rams at home. I am going to take the under, though. I haven't seen enough out of the Steelers offense, right? Like I do think the Rams are going to be able to kind of move the ball well through the air. Hell, if Kyron Williams is healthy, this game's probably at least 6 or 6.5 point spread, right? Like typically you don't see an impact from a running back that big, but it seems to be happening here in this one. So I like their ability to move the ball through the air. I think Stafford is going to continue this little heater that he's on and being able to rely on Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and sprinkle the run game in just enough to keep the Steelers honest and be able to use the play action. But most of this is going to rest on Matt's right arm.
I would agree with you on that one. I do like the Rams to cover this thing. I think that they actually probably pull this thing off by more than 3. I do like the under on this one here as well. This is one of those that I just don't trust the Steelers to put up enough points to carry us to the over. So I'm not going to surprise when we look up and we see even a 21-17 type of scoreboard on this one. So I do like the under. One of the props that I really like is Puka Nacua to go over 4.5 receptions on this one. I think the fact that Kyron is going to miss some time on this one, I think that we see the Rams focus on a little bit more of some quick hitting short passes. So I think we'll see a lot of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua kind of going over the middle on some quick slants to kind of keep the ball moving and substitute and supplement some of that run game that's going to be missing.
I could see that. I could see Tutu Atwell kind of jumping in there as well, right, as an extension to the run game to not get Kupp blown up for no reason. But I'm going to play into all that. I'm going to take Matt Stafford over 259.5 here against the Steelers due to the uncertainty of the run game and what that's going to look like this week.
All right. I like it. Let's go ahead and hit up the question coming in here over on Twitch. Trade CeeDee Lamb for Sam Laporta and Jordan Addison. PPR 2-4. The wide receivers, Lamb, Puka, Kirk, Watson, Palmer, Dell, tight ends, Thomas, and Schultz. You need more back than Sam Laporta for CD.
Tight ends are hard to come by. I don't know that I do this. Like Jordan Addison hasn't blown up yet, right? Like this week is going to be tough against the Niners. They do have a bye week here relatively quickly. Sorry, I'm pulling that up right now.
CD, I think it's fair to say that CD's had a fairly down year up until this point. Like he's not what we expected, not what you've necessarily drafted him to be, but he's still a top 15 wide receiver out there. And and actually let's change that over so I see the PPR, not just half point PPR. So in full PPR, he's scoring almost 15 points a game on average for you. Laporta's getting 13, so you're giving up a few points per game there. And I get that, it's tough to get points out of that tight end position, but you can also almost stream that position to, just as effective to get towards that double digit in most cases. I realistically like just looking at Laporta's finishes, finish of tight end 14, 11. Oh, let's get that changed over here as well. So tight end finish of 8, 8, 1, 17, 5, 17. So he's had a couple of really good weeks there. But those couple of really good weeks tend to also come when he falls into the end zone.
Yeah. I understand the allure to this. I don't think I'd do it. I think I'd rather have CeeDee Lamb and trust that it wasn't just a 1 week deal with him screaming for the ball and then they fed him against the Chargers. I would like to think that continues here for the rest of the season and they actually use their best pass catcher. And I think between Schultz and Thomas, you have two very serviceable tight ends on your roster, right? Like, yes, it's a little bit of tight end roulette for you, but I think Lamb provides an amazing ceiling with Puka providing a decent floor and being able to have Christian Kirk there to alternate in between this week with the bye week of Lamb. So congratulations on your Thursday night success, hopefully, with Christian Kirk. And then Puka with what Derek and I both think he's going to be able to do this weekend. I don't think I do it. It's probably fair, right? Like I see where it's fair. So if you're looking for the value, yes, like it is a fair trade. I don't know that I would make it though. I think I would keep CD.
Right, and some of that too is also one of those that you got to look at the overall roster construction as well. Yeah, if you remove Lamb from that, you're really relying on Puka and Kirk to have to try and carry you through rest of the season on this one, right? And there's, depending upon which side of the fence you fall on the Puka Nakua debate there, right? There's some folks out there that are firmly in the camp that Puka Nakua has little to no fantasy value rest of season because of the return of Cooper Kupp, and that you're where we've seen the one decent finish in the 2 games that Kupp's been back is because he fell into the end zone. There's others that, believe that this Rams offense will function a little bit more like, the Cooper Kupp, Robert Wood days of old, in which both of these guys can have fantasy relevance down the stretch. And then Christian Kirk is the wide receiver that you want there. So that's one of those that if you do this deal, you were kind of signing yourself up to have to run Puka Nakua and Christian Kirk week in, week out as your wide receiver 1-2. And then you've got to have enough roster construction elsewhere to be able to run, your running backs there to make up points that you're really missing from what can be a top end wide receiver 1. And you're going to have to run a really consistent flex that'll get you 10 points type of thing. So there's some other things in there as well. So Willing the Goat saying he hasn't gotten over 5 points from a tight end all season.
So whatever you have leading up to game day, switch it right before the start of them.
Right.
You should be able to get more than 5 points, especially between Logan Thomas and Dalton Schultz, right? Schultz had a really good game last week.
He's had 3 really good games in a row.
Logan Thomas is coming on. Like you should, what was it? I guess week 6. Thomas was a little down, but weeks 3, 4, and 5, Thomas played really well. You should be able, between those two, be able to get 8 to 12 points out of those spots fairly regularly.
Right. And because Schultz put up 13 points, 19 points, 16 points, weeks 4, 5, 6 in that order. And then Thomas is projected to do roughly around 10, if memory serves about right on this one.
Against a bad Giants defense.
Right.
So
and Willing the Goat, there's also some chances too that you've got a tight end on your waiver wire that you could pick up and plug and chug on that one too, potentially. So I get the allure of it, but there's also some of that tight
you're
ends.
Just shifting your problem, right? Yeah. You're shifting your problem away from tight end because you feel like you have Laporta over to wide receiver. And I would personally rather leave my problem at tight end because that's the easiest place to miss and still be extremely competitive.
Right. Agreed. Alrighty, let's head into our next matchup here. We've got the Arizona Cardinals heading over to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. The Seahawks favored by 8. The over-under on this one, 44.5. What are your thoughts here?
I'm taking Arizona to cover this game. I'm not completely convinced that the Seahawks are ready to blow someone out by double digits, essentially. So we're saying we're saying 24 to 13, 24 to 15, right? That's what they have to win by, 9 to cover that. It's a big number for a Seattle team that likes to run the ball. So I can see them holding a 14 to 10 point lead for the majority of this game, and then a backdoor cover coming late and just squeaking inside of this. So I'm going to take Arizona to cover this game. I do like Seattle to win it. And I'm leaning towards the over in this game, right? The Seahawks have given up some points. We know Arizona can give up points in bunches at times. So if you're on the West Coast, it's a good Fox game to watch. But the game doesn't necessarily blow my socks off unless I'm a Ken Walker owner.
Fair enough. And I am going to go with the over, and I am going to go with Seattle, but that's one of those that I'm not super confident on that one. Like, I don't feel great about that call there. Because I do think that this is one of those that we could see this thing end up like in a 27-20 type of matchup, which, just gets the cover done by the Cardinals there. But I'm gonna ride that out. I'm gonna say that Seattle covers this thing. We do find a way to get to the over. One of the props that I really like is Lockett to go under 57.5 receiving yards. I think you're right. I think this is one of those that we see a whole lot of Kenneth Walker running and continuing to run in this matchup.
Blew right past it. Here we go. I'm going to take Hollywood Brown over 4.5 receptions. I do think Seattle's going to be leading. It's going to mean that Arizona's throwing the ball to keep up here almost from the get-go. And I think Hollywood Brown, they've done a good job scheming him open, and that's good for 5 catches.
Fair enough. I like that call too. Let's hit up our next matchup here. We've got the Green Bay Packers heading to Denver, taking on the Broncos. Green Bay's favored by 1, the over under 45. Thoughts on this one?
The Denver Broncos are the only team in the NFL, unless Derek tells me I'm wrong, that have not beat the spread this year. They're 0-5-1. This trend will continue. The Broncos are a bad football team right now, and I think that continues. They're getting ready to be sellers here as we come up to the trade deadline. And I think a lot of this team has already checked out, unfortunately. So I think Green Bay wins this game. They're going to be able to move the ball on the ground with Jones and Dillon. And then once the Broncos suck up, I think they're going to be able to get them up over the top here. And whether they use Musgrave, I think you could see Christian Watson finally have a game of relevance for fantasy purposes, and Romeo Doubs will continue to find ways to get open and surpass his 39.5 receiving yard prop total.
I like it. I'm also going with Green Bay on this one. And as far as I know, there's not another team out there that's still sitting at the 0 on the against the spread and the win column there. So, yeah, they've been bad. So I am going to take Green Bay to cover this thing. I think they come into Denver. I think they get a win on this one. I do think that we see the over on this one. This is one of those not going to surprise me when we look up and we see this thing end somewhere in the 24 to 21 type of deal. Like I'm almost thinking a push happens into that line there, but I do think that we find a way to just get over on that one. I think we will see some points scored in this thing. One of the props that I really like, you mentioned him just a moment ago, Luke Musgrave. I think that he's going to find a way to go over 35.5 receiving yards. Again, this is a Broncos defense that gives up the most points to opposing fantasy tight ends in the league, and I think that Luke Musgrave has a very, very good day.
Very good. I'm taking Aaron Jones over 50.5 rushing yards. Finally healthy, going up against a bad Broncos defense, plus matchup here for Green Bay, and I think Aaron Jones is able to gash the Broncos here a little bit.
Absolutely. Hey, so Denver not only gives up the most fantasy points to opposing tight ends, they also give up the most fantasy points to opposing running backs there. So I like both of those things to come true. All righty, let's go ahead and hit up the next matchup here. We've got the Los Angeles Chargers heading out to Kansas City, take on the Chiefs. The Chiefs favored by 5.5. The over-under on this one, 48. What are your thoughts here?
I'm taking the Chargers to cover here. I don't like the 5.5, right? I don't like I could see it being a 4-point game. I could see it being a 3-point game, but it being a 6-point game for Kansas City to cover, I think is possibly much, right? So the Chargers, the pass rush has to get home, and that's going to be a big deal here. If the pass rush can get home, this game stays close. If the Chiefs are able to hold off Bosa and company, it could be a very long day for the Bolts. Nevertheless, I'm going to take LA to cover. I'm taking the over here. I think there's going to be some points in this game.
I'm on the other side of both of those ones. I'm going to take Kansas City. I think that they find a way to get this done. Kansas City's been pretty good against the spread, 4-2 against the spread with the 5-1 record out there. I think that we find a way for them to win this thing. And it's not going to surprise me if we see like a 24-17 type of victory here for Kansas City. So I do like the under on this one. This is a Kansas City Chiefs defense that is playing much better than what we've seen over the past few years here. The Chargers, right? Like I can't trust Brandon Staley to make decisions that are going to keep the Chargers close in this one. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see a late in game with the Chargers on their own 30-yard line and they said to go for it in 4th and 3 type of thing, to ice the win and keep that thing on the under. So, yeah, I think that we do see Kansas City win this thing. I think we see it on the under. I think that one of the props I really like. So part of that Kansas City defense being really good this year has meant that we haven't had to see Patrick Mahomes be vintage Patrick Mahomes, toss the ball all over the yard, score multiple touchdowns, all that kind of stuff. And he's had a down year for fantasy because of how good that defense has been. That being the case, I am going to take Mahomes to go under 2.5 passing touchdowns.
I'm going to take Rashee Rice over 38.5 receiving yards. He has been the most consistent wide receiver on this Chargers team. And yes, they brought in Mecole Hardman. I'm not blown away. I think a lot of what they brought Mecole Hardman in for was what Justin Watson was already doing, right? It's just that deep shot. I don't see him dominating touches in the middle. Maybe feel some of that presence since Valdez-Scantling has kind of fallen off a cliff here and is irrelevant for fantasy purposes at the moment. But Rashee Rice continues to find ways to earn playing time, and that is catching the ball and getting upfield, fallen into the end zone a couple times. But it would not surprise me, and I'll get to the back half. It would not surprise me if Rashee Rice ends up really kind of cementing himself as the go-to receiver on this team, right? We know it runs through Kelsey, but Rashee Rice, I think, is going to continue to earn playing time as long as he's doing things the right way. So much so that I picked him up in the home league, right? And I'm just going to stash him for now. I don't need to play him, but I like the possibilities of what could be. And if nothing else, because we have a keeper league, maybe I like it and throw a dart, because then he becomes, a 20th round, 21st round, whatever it is, keeper.
I like it. Tingley over on YouTube saying, "Heyo, what's going on?" And then let's go ahead and head on in here to the Sunday night game. We have got the Miami Dolphins taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles favored by 2.5. The over-under on this one, 51.5. What are your thoughts here?
I'm taking the Eagles here. They're at home. They're coming off a kind of an embarrassing loss here against the Jets. I feel like they're super motivated. And as well as this Miami team has been playing, they struggled, right? When they went up against Buffalo, they struggled. Philadelphia is a better defense than Buffalo, but can do all the same things, if not a little bit more offensively. So I'm taking Philly to cover this one, but I'm taking the over because I do think that we're going to see some fireworks in this game. Great Sunday night football game. Great Sunday night football game.
Absolutely. The Eagles defense, especially in the secondary, has been a bit suspect this year, especially from what we were used to seeing last year on this one. So there's I can understand the call for the over. However, 51.5's a big number to get to. I just think that both of these teams are going to play this thing a little bit tight, to the point where I think this thing's going to come down to a 27-24 victory for the Eagles. And the hook is what's keeping me on the underside of that one. I think that one. So I'm going under. I think we're going to be really close to that 51.5 number, but 51 is still less than 51.5. So I'm going the under. One of the props I really like was Raheem Mostert to go over 14.5 receiving yards.
I'm going out the big one here. I'm taking Tyreek Hill over 97.5 receiving yards in this game.
That is a big number, but we could see it happen too.
Well, yeah, the Eagles, this is where they're vulnerable, right?
Right.
They're vulnerable in the secondary. I think this is where the Dolphins have the chance to really kind of stay in this game and make it fun and back and forth. I don't think the Dolphins can afford to play it close to win this game. I think they have to just continue to cut it loose. Yes, you're trying to gash them a little bit on the ground, but if Mostert drops 1 or 2 on the ground and puts Miami in a hole, Tua going to be slinging it. And when he does, he's looking at Tyreek Hill first.
I like that one. Let's go ahead and head on over into the chat. And we got a few questions, comments, things like that coming in. So let's go ahead and hit those up here. Ray Gamer, someone dropped Higgins in my league, adding him, as you should.
Yes.
Right? Like, realize T. Higgins has had a down year, but that's still a name and a guy that you should be rostering and doing that. Like, that was a rage drop.
Yep, I had that happen in a work league that I am in. One of the guys was mad at T. Higgins, and he dropped him, and I scooped him back up. So I didn't play him last week. He had the bye this week, but I'm hoping these two – this is kind of the end of it, right? And they're going to come out of the bye. They're going to be rejuvenated, and we're going to see Higgins be a kind of a big-time player here for the Bengals heading down the stretch.
Right. As T. Higgins is a guy that we've seen, years in and years out there, where he may not necessarily give you like the most just consistent, steady Eddie performances where he, just constantly gets you that 10 to 15 points and, consistency his way into wide receiver 2 type of territory. He's a guy that goes out there and blows up, has firework games where he's wide receiver 1 a couple of times a year. And you, quite frankly, if nothing else, if you've got him on your bench, even if you don't, want to play him on those things, that's still one of those that you aren't having to face him on those blow up weeks either. Like that is the defensive side of fantasy football when you can, play keep away on some of those guys like that. Tingley, Roshan out, start Jeff Wilson, Warren, or Charbonnet. I haven't seen Jeff Wilson clear IR. So you're down to TJ Warren or Charbonnet. Between those two, I'd probably go with Warren just because we haven't seen Charbonnet really get enough snap count to have some relevance.
Yeah, cosign, right? We should know Saturday. So we should know tomorrow if Jeff Wilson does clear IR. If he does, I think it's an interesting play. But I would play Warren over Charbonnet because of the receiving work, right? So if you're getting half point, full points for receptions, Warren does outdo Charbonnet, even though Charbonnet has the easier matchup here. But I don't hate the Jeff Wilson piece. Excuse me, because of the game total, and we haven't seen him yet, right? We've seen A-Chain be successful. We've seen Mostert be successful. There's no reason to think that Jeff Wilson won't be in this Dolphins offense. But maybe this is kind of one of those sit back and wait type things, even if he is cleared, not knowing what his usage in the offensive flow is going to be to start. So Warren or Wilson, I lean Warren by a hair this week, but I'm not going to fault you if you need the upside of Wilson, because I do think he has a higher ceiling than either one of those backs do.
I like it. Ray Gamer saying that Olave had a rough game on Thursday. Yes, he did. Played him, only got about 5.7 points in the standard league. Opponent had Kamara, who had 17 points. Not a good start, but the rest of the roster is Hurts, Waddle, Barkley, James Cook, Hawkinson, Metcalf, Hopkins. That's Dustin Hopkins versus the Colts. And thinking between the Browns or the Bucks D, I'd play the Browns D if you're asking the opinion on that one. But I think you've got enough upside. You should be all right with this thing.
Yes, I'd agree. I'd play the Browns D this week. Keep an eye on Metcalf. He is questionable, so you might have to pivot off of that just a little bit. But I like Barkley. I like James Cook versus the Patriots here. Hawkinson. A tough matchup against the Niners, but they got to move the ball somehow if you're Minnesota. So Hawkinson has the potential to be extremely relevant there. So, yeah, I don't hate your chances. I was telling Derek earlier that apparently I went up against a ton of Alvin Kamara in my games this week. And I'm finding that out the hard way because I'm definitely staring down a hole because he got 50 touches. I know it's not actually that, but, touched the ball, 13 targets, 11 receptions, and then 10 carries on top of it. So 27 opportunities through the game is what Kamara got. It's a big workload to try and get past. So I think you're okay. I think Waddle and Hurts will kind of help carry you. And if Barkley's able to break one loose, that's really what you need here is you need touchdowns, and you definitely have a lineup that can get you touchdowns.
I like it. Gavin, over on YouTube, can someone answer if I did good traded Ridley for Higgins?
I'm not opposed to this, right? Both
Yeah.
wide receivers, they were drafted pretty damn close to each other on draft day. They both underperformed. Ridley's had a couple more flashes than Higgins, but I think Higgins plays in a better passing offense right now. With the way Travis Etienne's running the ball, we've still yet to see Trevor Lawrence kind of take that next step that a lot of us thought that he would. So we know Joe Burrow's there. The bye week makes his calf even healthier. So I do expect Higgins to outshine Ridley rest of the season.
Yeah, and I was seeing some interesting stats looking at it as far as Calvin Ridley. The way that they're utilizing him in Jacksonville is he's primarily on the outside and stays on the outside, and he doesn't really come inside into the slot like we see a lot of these other wide receivers and do that. So he's kind of always got the best cornerback that the other team has seen. He's having to play in contested catch balls a lot of times. And the route tree has him playing outside the numbers on almost everything, whereas a lot of these other guys where they're putting up points or when they start coming into the slot or they're making in-breaking type of routes on those things. And so, yeah, it's one of those that Ridley is going to be the boom bust player I think that we've seen so far in the season. He's going to have those deep shots. He's going to have a couple of blow up games there, and he's going to have other games where, like last night, he gets you 1 point because they're finding other deals where that comes into play. And Trevor Lawrence is just finding he's not necessarily going on his first read, which Calvin Ridley's I think the statistic I saw was like a 34.8% first read option as far as how they're running that. Whereas, he's coming off that first read and getting to a second, third read in which you're seeing both Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram get a fair bit of target share and fair bit of catches on that because they are on a lot of those in-breaking routes and they're becoming open quicker. And Higgins, like I said, I think that you're going to see some blow-up games down the stretch here. And the fact that they move him inside, outside, I think that only helps that as well. So long way to say I think that you did good.
I do too. And I think Ridley needs to catch the damn ball.
Yes.
Right? Like some of these aren't perfect on-target passes, and they're not registered as drops, but these are passes that Calvin Ridley should be able to – they're paying him to catch those balls. So he's got to step his game up as well, right? Like he's got to be able to get in and out of his breaks a touch quicker, and he's got to be able to help his quarterback come back to the ball. Don't let the defender go through you to get the ball and knock it away. When you're going down, making sure you're getting your hands underneath the ball. Some small fundamentals here for Calvin Ridley should help improve things for him. But I like that Higgins deal, man. I think he's a great buy low candidate right now.
Ray, back to his picking up T. Higgins. He's going to be the fifth wide receiver. That's
even
gold.
Better.
Yep.
Even better. Because now if you have a running back injury, you can sacrifice a wide receiver to get a serviceable back, right? And at least be able to continue on.
Absolutely. Ray saying with his matchup, the opponent has Tua and he has Waddle, and he has Hurts and they have A.J. Brown. So you guys are going to have a whole lot of kind of canceling out on some of those things.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's all right. There's a reason that you play that many other positions in there because that's where the difference will be. Marcos saying having a dilemma. PPR in multiples of 5, if that makes sense. So I'm thinking it's a point per reception where instead of it's 1 point, it's a 5 point per reception type of thing. is how that kind of reads to me. Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, or Jerome Ford. Thanks. As dirty as this sounds, I'm going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs and Jerome Ford.
I'm going Taylor and Ford.
Okay.
I need to see Gibbs do something. Like he's just coming off a soft tissue hamstring injury. Ford has a plus matchup against the Colts. Taylor, difficult matchup against the Browns, but they are more susceptible against the run than they are against the pass right now. We saw that in the first drive of the Niners game. McCaffrey ran right down their throat, and then they made some adjustments. But I think Taylor's going to see some passing work. Gibbs will see some passing work, so those kind of balance out a little bit. But I'm going to take Taylor over Gibbs by a couple hairs. It's not super close, but it's close enough to worth thinking about it.
Fair enough. Part of the reason I'm looking at the Gibbs side and the Jerome Ford, we're both in agreement on that one. That's a play there. As far as what I'm thinking on the Jahmyr Gibbs side of things is there's a good chance, Monty's already been ruled out. There's a good chance that Craig Reynolds misses there as well. So there's a good chance that Jahmyr Gibbs very well might be about the only show in town in the running back room in Detroit, a team that likes to run the ball. Jonathan Taylor, right? We're in this kind of influx thing with what's that split look like between him and Zach Moss and that tough matchup there. So I'm taking the upside of Gibbs, I think, but I think you're absolutely right. Jonathan Taylor probably provides a much safer floor in that particular situation there. Any other thoughts there?
No, other than I think that might be where you and I differ. I think Craig Reynolds plays,
Fair enough,
and sucks a lot of that up. So Gibbs might see 12 to 15 touches of the football, but I think 12 of those are going to be runs to the outside, and then you might see 3 passes head his way. Taylor, I think you might be able to see a little bit more of a balanced approach there, but we'll see how it shakes out, right? So we both agree with Ford. Derek's leaning Gibbs. I'm leaning Taylor. Hopefully that helps just a little bit. And good luck to you.
Yeah, and then Marcos, you have the thought process and the reasoning behind that, so you can kind of go which way you like there and rock and roll that one. Ray saying that he's planning on trading Breece Hall, trading for Breece Hall and Jacobs. Also have Monty. Do you think it's a good idea if I could trade Monty and James Cook for the 2 of them? With Barkley, Jacobs, and Hall as the best RBs?
If you can get that done, go for it.
Yeah.
Yes, Monty's been great, and he's been great value to add to your team. But if you're able to flip that out, I traded for Breece Hall a couple weeks ago in the home league, and I like Josh Jacobs' kind of rest of season stretch here. I think he has some opportunities to kind of get back in the swing of things if the Raiders are able to remember that they can run block too. So I would be all for that. That's a hell of a 3-headed monster that you would have at running back.
I like it. Tingley, are you trading ETN or other RB to upgrade wide receiver? 10-team PPR lineup is Law, Kelsey, Puka Nacua, Devonta Smith, Flowers, Lockett, Dell, ETN, Kamara, Pacheco, A-Chain, Roshan. If I'm trading ETN, I need a massive wide receiver back.
I would try and move Pacheco or Devon A-Chain.
Right.
A-Chain, we've seen his ceiling, right? His ceiling was the Denver game, but that's all anybody wants to remember. And yes, he's been productive out there. But remember, when he comes back, that's a 3-headed backfield in Miami. So
Right.
He's going to have to do a whole lot with 12 touches. That's a big
12
ask.
touches are going to be on the high side, depending upon if he has the hot hand that week, I think.
Right. So that's a big ask, but people are still in love with him. And it's Jeff Wilson. We haven't seen him play yet. So, it's one of those things. So yes, he's on IR, but Pacheco or A-Chain would be the 2 guys that I would look to move. And then you can run with ETN and Kamara as kind of your top 2. And then Pacheco, A-Chain would be your third back. And even if you need to pair that, like Pacheco and Devonta Smith for A.J. Brown. See if you can upgrade on the same team, right? Or Pacheco straight up for – I don't know that I'd go straight up for Waddle right now. That's a bit of a reach. But you could do Pacheco straight up for like a CeeDee Lamb. Because CeeDee Lamb hasn't been performing that well.
The other thing, too, is you could try and flip a Puka Nacua, right? For if you got those, we all have these managers in the leagues that they really just kind of look at where they're at season ranking. Puka Nacua is wide receiver 6 on the season, and I don't think that he finishes as wide receiver 6. So I think we've seen the best of his season so far. And while he'll be productive, you could probably flip him for, at that point, I'd see if I could flip him for for something else that's a little bit lower down the list there, like Nico Collins. See if you could flip him for CD. There's some other potential there as well.
Yep, absolutely.
So, any other thoughts on this one?
No, I mean, I think you have enough different pieces there that you could get creative with your offering, but I wouldn't include Etienne or Kamara as a part of that. Like, you could look at, again, Pacheco and then pairing him up with a Flowers or Lockett to really upgrade, right? And see what that looks like for your opponent and or your league mate, right? And whether it's a Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown is a guy that I think is worth taking a look at. I think Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, and Jefferson, I think, are kind of the ones out of reach. But anything outside of those top 5, I think, is well within play.
Yeah, I would agree. Alrighty, let's go right here. So Gavin's saying to probably use Higgins as a trade piece because he has Kupp, Chase, Ayuk, and Flowers. Yeah, I mean, you can. Just don't expect...
You need him to have a game first, right?
Right.
You're going to have to sit on Higgins until someone comes to you asking like they really want him, or what you really need is Higgins to have a monster game next week, right? As soon as possible. And then you flip him on a high side, because right now the name is nice, but the performance has been so abysmal that I don't feel like you're going to get what you want out of that.
Right. And you need a performance that he had in week 2 to show up, right? Where he goes off for 8 for 12, 90 yards and 2 touchdowns type of thing, and get you up into a top 5 wide receiver finish on the week before you flip him. Now that might be a little tough looking at his schedule after he comes back with San Francisco, Buffalo, Houston, Baltimore. You're probably not going to get that thing really until you see like Pittsburgh week 12. And that might be a little tough then to try and flip him going into your right up against the trade deadline, right up against the there's not really that super plus matchup until you get to week 12. On that. But the talent is there and he could blow up.
I like the Nico call from the previous question though. Like maybe Higgins for Nico straight up, right? You already have Chase and Higgins, so I get you where you don't want 2 Bengals. So maybe it is something Higgins, Higgins for something like a Nico Collins, or Higgins and your 4th RB for, again, CeeDee Lamb, right? And the true number 1, something of that nature, or areas where you could possibly use that to trade up in a piece if you find the right guy.
Right. I like it. Alrighty. Ray saying that he traded Moss for James Cook last week. That was a good move there. And then he's asking if they traded. That's going back to the Breece Hall and Jacobs, Monty, James Cook thing. So if they reject the trade, would you add either Watson or DK to the trade? I got no problem moving off Christian Watson.
Cosign. We have not been big proponents of Christian Watson. We've yet to see it. Hopefully he has a big week against Denver, and then you're able to do that because, again, Romeo Doubs is the security blanket for Jordan Love. It's not Christian Watson. He is the home run play. He is not the floor play. So if you can get him to have a home run game for the first time this season, that's awesome. Go ahead and flip him.
Yeah, the second that I have if I've got Christian Watson on it, the second that I get a home run game, it's see you later type of thing. Because, wide receiver 27, 23 coming back off of missing a lot of time is not going to get much done there for you.
Would you sorry, I'm thinking back to a couple questions ago.
Sure. Which one?
Would you flip Pacheco for Garrett Wilson?
Depends on what I need and what my running back.
If you're looking for receiver, right? It's going back to the question where,
this one.
Yes, I think I'd look at that.
Yeah,
again,
I think
the Jets are coming off their bye. Offensively, they're trying to get things together. Like Breece Hall is, again, was it Tuesday or last week? As Breece Hall goes, Garrett Wilson, so the Jets and Garrett Wilson, and I think it makes things a little interesting. So if the guy who has Garrett Wilson is needing some RB help, that may not be too terrible because now you can play Devon A-Chain once he comes back if you need to, but you have another piece there at wide receiver and a true number one to go at the top of your roster here. So you'd end up probably playing Wilson and Devonta Smith and Puka, Etienne, Kamara with Kelsey. Like that's a pretty good lineup. That's tough. There's a lot of upside, a lot of safe floors built into that lineup. So that might be something tingling to look at is Pacheco for Garrett Wilson. So CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson type is what you're looking for.
I like it. So Ray's question there is if they only have Ayuk and Moore at wide receiver, not anyone else, and they just lost Connor, so kind of back to that trade question there. Yeah, I mean, if you might be able to find them a little desperate at the wide receiver if that's all they've got is Ayuk and Moore, especially as we get going into bye weeks. I think it's going to be really rough here.
Yeah, Niners are 9. Bears, I don't know the Bears bye week off the top of my head.
Give me a moment, I'll tell you. 13.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, there's a chance that they might accept that. Just from a standpoint that they need some help at wide receiver there. Yeah. And yeah, if I can move Christian Watson, I'm gonna move Christian Watson. Any other thoughts on that one?
No.
Okay. Mr. COD Reaper, who can I pick up over DK? Have Romeo Doubs.
I like Doubs this week, especially against Denver. I have no problem with that. I think that you're going to see. I think you'll see Surtain play equally against Doubs and Christian Watson. So I'm not opposed to that for this week. If you're worried about DK, Doubs has more than enough credibility here this season to be able to plug him in as a fill-in for DK, and you're really not skipping a beat because DK is not finding the end zone.
Right. I mean, at most you're what? And if you're looking projection-wise between those two, this week you're probably DK's probably what, a 14, maybe a 15, depending upon your league format. Romeo Doubs is probably somewhere around 11 or 12. So you're talking 3 points, and that's something that you can make up with other ceiling plays elsewhere. So I don't know that you necessarily need to pick up anybody over DK at that point. Kenji, would you trade King Henry for either Aaron Jones or Mixon full PPR?
No.
Years past it would be an absolute no. This year this is one of those that you got to give pause to it for a moment. And I don't know that I necessarily. I guess I'll answer it this way for you, Kenji. It really much depends on what you think the Titans are going to do. If the Titans are going to be competitive in games, winning games down the stretch here, King Henry's going to get a lot of work, and he's going to get a lot of upside. But if the Titans are going to be behind games to the point where it becomes a very negative game script, and they're down by a touchdown or more, especially late in those games, King Henry's, Derrick Henry just isn't used in the passing game, and we've seen Tajay Spears really get a lot of run to the point where we've seen him actually outsnap Derrick Henry in multiple games this year. So there is a whole lot of that it very much depends on what you think is going to go down the stretch there. And kind of looking at it coming out of the bye week, they play Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, Jacksonville, Carolina, Indianapolis, Miami. There's a lot of those games that they're going to be in going into your playoff matchup, right? That Atlanta game, that should be a very close game. The Pittsburgh game should be close. Tampa Bay should be close. Jacksonville, that one could get a little squirrely and could potentially get away. But Carolina should be close. Indianapolis should be close. And the Miami game is probably going to get a little squirrely and get away on that one. So, I'm
keeping Henry. We've seen it hasn't been consistent, but we've seen what he can do, right? And he still has that RB1 potential, that top 5 running back capability. We haven't seen Aaron Jones do that for a couple of years now. And Joe Mixon, we have not seen him do it since week 9 of last year when he had the 4 touchdowns. Other than that, he's just been kind of ho-humming around the back end of RB1 to the middle of RB2. So I think I'm keeping Henry here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree on that one, especially when we start breaking down the schedule on that one, right? Like if this is one of those that they were going to be put through the works there a little bit, I think that it becomes you probably move off of him just from the standpoint if they're going to be losing games by a touchdown or more type of thing, especially down the stretch. It's Tajay Spears season, but I think you've got several matchups over the next 7 weeks that are going to be very competitive for them, and you'll see Derrick Henry in there a whole bunch. All righty, we got the Monday night game here. Let's go ahead and hit this one up. San Francisco 49ers heading over to the Minnesota Vikings. San Francisco favored by 7, the over-under 44 in this one. What are your thoughts here?
I'm taking San Francisco, and it doesn't matter whether McCaffrey's playing or not. This team is just that much better than the Vikings. I expect them to be pretty peeved after losing to Cleveland. Much easier team to pass against. So I think Brock Purdy comes back in a big way. So we'll see a lot of Brandon Ayuk. If Debo can't go, we'll see Greg Jennings. We'll see George Kittle. We'll see Ronnie Bell. Some of these other ancillary players who will step up and fill in here. So I'm not concerned for this week with the injury issues for San Francisco. I still think they're able to cover that spread. Worst case scenario, it's a push. But I think they win this game by 10 or more, honestly.
Yeah, I don't see this one being overly close either. I think that you're right. San Francisco walks away with this one pretty easy. I do think we see a lower scoring affair on this thing. I do think that we see Alexander Mattison struggle in this one. In fact, the prop that I saw on that one that I really liked was Alexander Mattison under 45.5 rushing yards.
I am taking Brock Purdy over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I think he gets a couple this game.
I'm just hoping that a couple of those find their way to Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, go for it. I got Ayuk in places.
There we go. All righty. Well, guys, that's all the games that we've got to cover here. If you have any questions, comments, anything like that, you have any other thoughts for your fantasy rosters, you want some opinions or answers on, let's put them in the chat. We're going to be wrapping it up here in just a moment, but we'll make sure that we hit any of your questions in the chat up here. Kevin, any final thoughts out there?
Keep grinding, fellas. I guess ladies too. Sorry, not to forget about y'all, but yeah, keep grinding. Bye weeks are tough, injuries, all these waiver wires, teams, if they're losing their back, they're going, RBBC and making life a little difficult on you. So, keep working the waiver wire, keep looking at trade possibilities. If you're 6-0, great. Start kind of looking ahead here to weeks 10 and beyond, right? We're in week 7 now. Start looking weeks 10 and beyond, how to set yourself up for a good playoff run. If you are, 3-3 or worse, then you're still in win now mode, right? So you're trying to put together the best possible roster this week to win, get above 500, get a little bit of breathing room, and let's worry about next week after you get some of your players back.
I like it. COD Reaper asking thoughts on, I believe he's asking about Jamal Williams on this one.
Or Javonte.
I believe it's Jamal. I just happen to remember Jamal on his roster when he submitted that a while back.
Yeah. Meh. I mean, with the way they're using Kamara right now, Jamal's kind of an afterthought, right? Like, the Saints are not moving the ball well enough to get inside the 5, where Jamal Williams would be hyper used or hyper efficient for what they need him to be. Kamara is kind of running that show between the 20s here at the moment, and the Saints are just not a good offensive team right now. Derek Carr's, pouting. He's throwing hissy fits and throwing players under the bus, and they got a whole bunch of problems going down in the Big Easy right now. So Jamal Williams is probably a guy I'm fading away from.
I would agree with that one as well. Not only that, right? Like, this is the Saints offense looked so darn good when they were inside the red zone and inside the 10 zone. Really, we start seeing the nonsense of Taysom Hill and this Wildcat.
Back to back good weeks from Taysom Hill, and they're actually using him as a pass catcher. Like, we might have to take a look at this and reevaluate a little bit, because if they keep tossing him opportunities, Taysom Hill becomes a worthy start at your tight end position, not just a random upside play.
Right. And this is one of those, it really surprised me when you start seeing defensive tackles as fullbacks back there. So
I love that. I love seeing those big guys line up, getting a stance, and they're just trying to knock someone's head off.
So, yeah, absolutely. COD asking, would Jamal, I'm believing this is for Jamal Williams, would it be a good trade-off to offer along with DK? It depends on if they're running back needy. Like, they got to be running back desperate at that point. And, DK has some upside there, but it really depends on what you're trying to get and who you're trying to get with a Jamal Williams DK trade. Thoughts, Tingley asking thoughts on a Puka Nacua Isaiah Pacheco for Cooper Kupp trade.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
That's possible. I mean, take your shot, man. Worst they can say is no, right? If they say no with Kupp, okay, then move down the line. Like, who's the next guy that you're willing to offer that deal to? And just kind of work your way through it.
Right. Yeah, I like it. So Mr. Cudi's asking a tight end and a wide receiver, right, for the Jamal Williams DK trade. That could make sense, right? Jamal Williams for a tight end type of thing. It depends on what wide receiver you're looking at there. From what we've seen out of DK, you're not going to be able to look at a high end wide receiver. You're banking off of name value there.
Yep, you're pimping the name right there.
So, I mean, you could try and see it on a Garrett Wilson, and just see, right? Like, that would be a big upgrade. You could try that one. A lot of people are out on the Jets offense, not a believer in Zach Wilson. All the things there, and you could potentially try and sneak one in there. As far as the tight end goes, it depends on what tight end. But at this point, if you don't have Kelsey, you need to string the position anyway. Play the upside, play the matchups there. There's a few other options out there, but not a tight end that you're going to be able to get with that deal. Terry, what's good? Not much, Terry. We're coming down to the end of it, answering any questions that folks are throwing in the chat here before we call it a night. So again, guys, if you have questions, comments, throw them in the chat. Let's get these things knocked out here and taken care of for you before we call it a night. Which QB would you like? Watson at Indianapolis, Stafford at Pittsburgh, Love at Denver. For me, it kind of goes more into the Stafford or the Love side of things.
Yeah, I've Stafford or Love this week over Watson. I lean Stafford at home by a hair, but I am definitely not afraid to play Jordan Love this week at Denver.
Right. And I'm thinking I'm right there with you. Stafford's one of those that not going to surprise me if we look up and we see him get to 280 and 2 touchdowns, right? Like
I hope so. Then my prop hits.
absolutely. There's a chance though that with this Packers game in Denver that the running game just takes over, and we see them not necessarily have to lean on Jordan Love and the right arm and all of that, right? Like there's a good chance that we could see Green Bay just literally run away with this game in Denver, and to the point where the floor play for Love is 180 and 1, right? Like you could absolutely see that come to play there. Versus Stafford, I think Stafford on a bad day is still good for 220 and 1. So I'd lean Stafford at that point.
There you have it.
JD, Amon-Ra and Olave for Cup and Michael Thomas or Judy.
No.
Yeah.
No. I like some Cooper Cup, but
the upside isn't that much greater than what you see on Amon-Ra, especially the way they utilize him in Detroit. Like Amon-Ra is a top 10 wide receiver. Cooper Cup, sure, probably a top 5 wide receiver. But what you're giving up for Olave to Michael Thomas, if Michael Thomas doesn't fall in the end zone with that one yesterday, that's not a very good game, and he hasn't really been utilized that much. And Jerry Jeudy, you're hoping that the Broncos trade him and he gets into an offense where he's not necessarily the focal point on that one, and he's able to have what I call Juju Smith-Schuster syndrome, where he has a top-end wide receiver to take the coverage off, and he can be the wide receiver too. Any other thoughts on this one?
No, I agree with that.
Okay. Mr. COD saying, all righty, thanks, guys. He'll keep us posted. And JD, I'm not sure what we're saying.
For sure.
Oh, gotcha.
He likes Love over Stafford.
Okay. So he likes Love over Stafford. I think we were on the other side of that, going the Stafford over Love train. All right. Guys, if you have any other questions, now is the time, or we're going to call it a night. And while I give everybody a chance to throw their last ones in there, do appreciate everybody tuning in and throwing all the chats in there. These Friday night shows are always a blast going through that and helping you guys get that set up there. But I do believe that that's going to do it for us. Any final thoughts out there?
Finals. Nah, good luck, guys. Hit us up, even after the show. Hit us up on the socials. We will get back to you as soon as we can, and try and impart our knowledge / opinion, right, to help you get a win here in week 7.
Absolutely. And you can find us on all those socials at Good Old Boys FF, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the places. It's all the same, Good Old Boys FF. And again, if you're watching this, listen to this, best place to help support the show, head over to the YouTube and hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, help us out there. Last question. Terry, you squeaked it in here. Javonte Williams or Devonta Foreman, full PPR. I'm going to go with Foreman. He's got the entire share of that backfield, even in a bad matchup.
I'm going Williams because if you're going to beat Green Bay, you got to beat them on the ground, and Javonte's got to turn it around at some point. So this is the little bit of homerism left in me, Terry. I can't say Foreman's a better play than Javonte Williams.
Fair.
Your logic's sound, Derek, right? Like he is the show in town. My fear is, at what point do the Bears get smoked out of this game and they just abandon the run anyway?
That's fair. I'm banking on the fact that in that one we have a couple of backup quarterbacks, a couple of just this is a grinded out, grimy game, and we still see Devonta Foreman get 20 carries type of thing, and I don't see Javonte getting that kind of usage on this one. So, but there we go. Terry, you've got mixed opinions. You've got the thoughts on that one there as well. So, but that's going to do it for us. Appreciate everybody tuning in. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe.